into my cellar. Okay. Got a few things to go over this week. We'll just jump right in. Two things. Only one concerning RPGs. I'm a mere stripling at 67. Ah, yes, those were the days. Only half of your parts popped, snapped, or crackled when you stood up. But I made a mistake in the recent past of trying to partake of amusement park rides. In one case, I was disabled for several minutes after leaving the ride, having to stand stock still and concentrating solely on not throwing up. In the second instance, when I left the ride, the operator was so concerned about my appearance that he wanted to call the EMTs. No more rides for me. Yeah, that's one of those ways of nature just tapping you on the shoulder and says, I think you may be too old for this. On a similar note, as it happened last week when I was driving, on two different occasions, I hit a series of odd bumps. I have a very short wheelbase car. And instead of bumping up and down, it shook me side to side and made it feel like my innards were sloshing. And that was a damned unpleasant experience. And I guess if you want to design an absolutely killer lethal amusement park ride, try to figure out how to do that a couple of times. Yeah, I'm spewing all over the place. Okay, RPG comment. We're currently running a campaign set in Greyhawk using AD&D and 2nd edition books. It's interesting to play a system where the characters themselves are fairly basic people with more or less average ability stats and no built-in superpowers. I'm using magic items as a core way of improving the PC's overall power level. Generally, consumable items like scrolls and potions are items that have a limited number of charges. It's a lot of fun, in that the players really have the challenge of deciding if and when to expend their single-use item. Also a challenge for me to create situations where they have a chance to make use of their limited access to spells and magical effects. You're doing it right. Yeah, I know, there's no right, there's no wrong. But if someone were to say, what do you think of that? I'd say that's just exactly what you were supposed to do. Players were pretty much average. Maybe extraordinary in one stat or another, but pretty much average. And the prevalence of low-level magic in 1st edition was designed to do exactly what you're doing. Okay, I made a mistake. In my very first campaign in 74, I put in a ring of polymorphing. And boy, was that a mistake. But finally, Crazy Neil polymorphed himself into a golden dragon inside a very small room and became the first known iteration of Dragon Spam. And I also learned that you really, really, really got to be careful about the magic you put in, particularly with new players. Particularly with players who might not have the experience of what happens with splash effects. And that's good. It should be. A scroll should be a big deal. A wand with 3 charges should be a big deal. When do I use them? Want to have even more fun? Give them a wand that they know has a very limited number, but they don't know how many. So is the next one up going to be the last one? Is there still one in there? Ooh, the possibilities. Interested to see where your project goes, Tim. Well, this is from a friend of mine. It didn't go very well today. We had one young man show up. His mom brought him to the library. He's a homeschooler, I believe, and of course the school district publishes a schedule of all the events all the activities and whatever that they're all eligible to partake in. So I said, well, okay, tell you what, we'll try this again in 2 weeks, and I'm going to make sure I take at least a 2-player game, a short, fast, fun 2-player game in my bag, just in case it happens again. Now, why did it happen? So I believe, and I couldn't say, exactly today, but I'm going to go in and find out. I believe that the person at the library that I thought was heading all this up kind of dropped the ball. I believe that it was not publicized through the high school like I thought it was going to be. I believe that what publicity it got was very limited, as evidenced by the turnout today. Because I know deep in my soul that there are D&D players at the local middle school and high school. I know it. I've spoken to some of them over the in the past, so I know they're there. It was funny when I was apologizing to the guys, the young man's mom. She goes, "Oh, it's all right. You don't have to apologize. I know who you are." And I don't know. She might have been the kind of mom that, because my name was there, she might have looked me up. Or she might have been an old player by herself, in her own right. I don't know. But it didn't go too well. I'm gonna flog somebody at the library. And I found it extremely curious that the person that I thought was heading all this up and scheduled it for this week was on vacation this week and did not come in. So, am I pissed off? Yes. Because I tried to explain to the librarian that was there. I said, "Look, this isn't for me. I've taught thousands of people how to play the game. I don't have that urge anymore. I was just simply trying to set something up for my branch, who I, for the most part, love to death. I've been a patron of this branch for over 40 years. I was just trying to help them set up a cool after-school activity. It wasn't about me. It was about them having a program. So we're going to see what happens, and I'll let you know. Right now, I'm half disappointed and half pissed off. So that's where that lays. During our game last night, someone brought up a question that I thought maybe you could answer. Who came up with the treasure tables that are associated with the various monster lairs? And what was the thought process behind which type of treasures would be assigned to a monster? This is for AD&D and the original D&D tables we all know so well. Thanks in advance. Well, if it was Greyhawk or earlier, Gary did. If it's Blackmore or later, I may have had a hand in it. I don't really recall how many or if there even were any tables. The tables were put out there as a tool to help design and build a dungeon for your friends and players to play in. A lot of the tables and charts were there for people that didn't have the imagination or the confidence to just do it on their own. And so that would have been Gary. Which ones went where? Well, that was kind of, goblins and trolls and lowlifes. They're not going to be running around with really expensive stuff. So I'm sure you were rolling on a lower table, earlier number in the alphabet, if I recall correctly. They were all lettered. And the really exotic, esoteric stuff, the high-end whoopee treasures were supposed to be in the possession of really high-up, lethal characters and or circumstances. And it was, again, so much of what we did in OD&D and AD&D first were give guidelines. This is, if you want to put in a treasure, okay, here's what you do. And some of the tables are pretty evenly broken down by percentages, and some of them are skewed to one or two high-end results. Why? Well, that's why. Hi. Can't think of what to put in there? Okay, here. Rolling the table. Don't like it? Okay, modify it. But at least we got you over the hump of putting something in there, if that was what you wanted to do. The higher the monster, the harder to kill, the better the treasure. It just tries to follow a logic. You're not going to find 6 orcs and 2 smelly goblins sitting on a hoard of 600 pearls, all worth 50 to 250 gold pieces each. Pretty illogical. In the fantasy world, pretty much, big and strong takes from small and weak. Bigger and stronger, the better stuff they've taken. The more of it they will have accumulated. All right, now I've been thinking on this one off and on since I cut and pasted it earlier this afternoon. One of my 5 approximately top tips on being a good DM. Got to be observant. I think that's the first one. You have to be observant. You have to look at the interplay, the dynamics in the group. When you see somebody, especially if it's a new group forming or a couple of new people joining an established group, I think a good DM looks for those people that are being talked over and brings them into the game. Oh, what was that you said, Don? Oh, and it's a not quite so subtle as it could be way of reminding the rest of the party that these new people probably have something else to contribute to the party. Another thing you got to be really good at is hearing, listening. Listening how one of the hardest jobs for DM, in my opinion, is keeping a straight face when the group is bandying about possible ideas of what are we going to do in this circumstance. And some of their, to you, obviously not to them, but to you, some of their proposed solutions are silly or so preposterous that they can't possibly succeed. You know, you're going to storm the castle with a pitchfork. Not likely to happen. So you have to listen. You have to see. You have to have some empathy. You can't be a cruel-hearted, cold bastard who chuckles when their character bites the big one. I think you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to absolutely disregard what you spent. Doesn't matter how many hours getting ready. When the party turns left, when everything you have done up to this point would immediately suggest that they go right, when the party decides to chase a red herring, something that's really just something you threw in to add color and background, you have to be flexible enough to run with it. You have to be able to, with a straight face, go, okay, you're going to attack the gazebo. Everybody roll for initiative. All right, I quote a famous series of episodes from the Knights of the Dinner Table when somebody said all they saw was a gazebo and they attacked it. They obviously didn't know what a gazebo was. But you have to be fluid and flexible in that regard. And you have to have a little empathy. And you got to listen well. Got to listen well. You have to be able to hear what's going on below the normal conversation in the group. You can't stick your finger in every time two of them are arguing with each other, but you have to be aware that there's arguments going on. You're there to facilitate fun. They're not there to jump to the strings you pull. Keep that in mind. You're there to facilitate the fun. Because if hell's bells, if you're not having fun, DM and quit. Why would anybody do that and all that it entails and all the headache and the heartache it entails if you weren't having fun? What sick, perverted, sicko, weirdy are you? Just like making yourself miserable. Okay. Whatever floats your boat. I don't know if I can come up with 5. If I sat down long enough and made a list, I could probably come up with 12. Be consistent. Be consistent. That's very important. When bad shit happens, let it. When good shit happens, let it. If you're consistent and then some bad shit happens, your players will realize it's not you. It's the circumstance. It's the framework of the story, whatever it might be. Be consistent. And don't be Monty Hall and just give away mounds of treasure and experience. Let them earn it. There's more satisfaction in $1 earned than $1 found on the street. At least that's what I was told, and I've always found to be true. All right, question. After I just recently watched the Q&A from the 2016 Gary Con, that was the Dorks of Yore. Yeah, that was an 1.5 hour long interview that they ended up breaking up into 8 parts and publishing a little part at a time over a course of 2 or 3 months. Did anyone eat the pie? Yes. The pie has always been eaten. We didn't do the pie game this year, and that's fine. I had expressed last year to the general public that wanted to listen that I wouldn't have felt quite the same doing the pie game without Jim being there. His family offered to get the pies, and I guess they didn't. They decided not to, and that's perfectly fine with me. I think the pie game should have ended. Do you think good writing trumps good ideas in tabletop RPGs? Or given the nature of the medium form, is it a medium or a form? And the way DMs are wont to graze, pick, and choose everything from rules through to characters, settings, lore, and plots, is bad writing forgivable if the ideas are there? Yes. If it's full of good novel ideas, challenges, and that you can get past the bad writing in almost any circumstance. It probably wouldn't have been published except by the guy himself or the girl herself who wrote it if there wasn't something there. Ideas trump skills at writing. I believe yes. There are many an article that I published in one of my magazines that came in badly written, brilliantly ideated, that I cleaned up for the purpose of publishing. And there are many things that came in typed neatly, ideas arranged neatly, and just were boring as shit. And so they didn't get published. It's the idea, it's the germ, the kernel, the seed. Have I played Castles and Crusades from Troll Lords? Some, I think, in italics because my old man memory isn't great. I I think it was Gary who called it the closest to what he would have produced as 3rd edition AD&D. I'm just a huge fan of Troll Lords and Goodman. Well, I love the guys at Troll Lords. I admire the heck out of Goodman and what they managed to do, particularly their Dungeon Crawl Classic and Mutant Crawl Classic. I think are brilliant games. They've got some other ones that haven't perhaps caught the eye yet, but should have, or are good products. Troll Lords, I think. I get along great with the Trolls. After Gary passed, they asked me. Well, Jim came to me, and with their approval, and asked me if I would replace the column that Gary had written in their magazine, and I did for. I don't know. I wrote 6 or 8 essays or columns or whatever. Yeah, I love the Trolls, and they have some good stuff. Their siege engine mechanic is excellent, unless somebody's done one better since that I haven't seen yet. Okay, enjoy listening to your show from my backyard hammock. It's a nice spring morning and gets me thinking about the games I'm in over a hot cup of coffee. Something I've come to realize about myself in one of the games I'm in, that somehow or other I end up being the guy steering the group. What are we doing? Where are we going? Why are we doing it? All things that inevitably get resolved by myself. I usually try to involve the rest of the group in those decisions, but half of them are seemingly asleep or just don't care. I'm not sure if it's that I have taken on the role of decider, or as if this is the DM not engaging those players directly. I'm having fun with the game, but don't want to be the guy that dominates everything, other players only waking up when there's combat. Any suggestions on how to deal with this so other players don't get bored and leave? Well, the first and foremost one would be I would call out the ones that are sitting there like bumps on a log. Well, Bob, what do you think about this? What do you think we ought to do? Come on, wake up. You're part of the group. With a smile. And see if you can't spur some activity that way. Just reach right in and poke them. Hey, what do you think? And if they're not leaving and they're not expressing discontent, enjoy it for what it is. If you don't care to be the decision maker, well, that's a different story altogether. But if you're okay with being the decision maker and they're okay with letting you make the decisions, where's the problem? Don't be guilty. If you do what you can to keep them engaged and they only engage to a certain level and they're not leaving and they're not griping, enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. I'm not sure if it's that I've taken on the role of the decider, or if this is the DM okay, I read that. All right. They won't get bored if you keep prodding them. Maybe now again, you got to know your group, and there are going to be occasions when Bill just isn't, or Jeannie just isn't there tonight. They got other shit going on, other things in their head, whatever. Okay, that's acceptable because we're just people, we're humans. So you need to be able to pick up on that. But when that isn't the case, poke them, get them involved, do it humorously, get everybody around the table to chuckle at the very least. Break the tension. As you might imagine, there's a lot of laughing done at my tables. A whole lot. Let's see. All right. new writer. I DM'd a game last week. It was a one-shot, one-page called The Honey Heist, a rather well-known one-page game in the indie game circles. The PCs play randomly selected bears, or possibly a honey badger. They have 2 stats, D6 roll under. I and the players had a blast, but it was a very definition of fly by the seat of your pants DMing. Whoa, sounds like I'd love it. Afterwards, my mind played over the missed opportunities lost in the heat of the moment. That tells me it was a good game session and maybe a good game as well. When you think about, I could have done this, I could have done that. There's bridge players that'll go over a missed trick, and let them eat at it. There's mahjong players that'll go over a bad disc. Everybody makes plays that they wish they could take back. Everybody makes plays that, and I don't care what you're playing. Maybe they could have done it better. I'd say that was probably a pretty good game if it engaged you to that degree. And so the question is, do I ever have, I should have done XYZ moments after DMing? Well, I'd be a liar if I said I didn't. Question 2, what do you think might be the big lesson from this effect experience, or shoulda, woulda, coulda DM referees? I think it should make you a better DM. Because the next time something like that, nothing's ever exactly the same unless you're running a pre-gen. Next time something comes up, you'll be a little nimbler. You'll have done it before, so to speak, and a little quicker on your toes, metaphorically speaking, and able to shift and change directions. I think that going over coulda, woulda, shouldas is healthy to an extent. Now, not something on the way home, driving home. Oh, geez, if I'd done that, but not Tuesday. Not Tuesday morning on a Sunday game. You shouldn't still be going over it. Or you could think about it, but if you're still obsessing over it, well, that word obsess has a lot of weight. But I think that's how we learn. We don't necessarily have to make mistakes. You can make a response and then realize later, this would have been an even better one. Okay, the next time you're faced with that, you'll make the even better one more often than not. Same as a player, same as a DM. Oh, hell, I shouldn't have knocked that door down without listening. Okay, I've been gently warned off on 2 intrusive questions for the curmudgeons. Anyhow, I found trace elements of you recently in the Gamma World Science Fantasy role-playing game rulebook by James Ward and Gary Chiquette. To be exact, on page 8, second paragraph under Constitution. I talked about this a week or 2 ago. You must have missed that episode. Exceptions, some particularly rare or unusual mutational effects, such as exposure to cascium, may raise or lower Constitution ratings. Question, do you know why the authors named this isotope after you? Answer, yes, because we kind of did that crap all the time. I think that doing those things that we did like that and other, I think, became known as Easter eggs. Putting names in there, references to something else. It's just something we did because we were bored. And Jim undoubtedly thought, or it might have been Jake. Jake might have done it. I don't know. It was just a little Easter eggy thing. And it never did go into detail, just you might. Something might happen if you're exposed. Do you know why they did it? Because it was fun. Same reason I did things like that. Did this sort of thing happen to you a lot? No. It's usually just an in-joke amongst people that work together more often than not. Can I tell you the origins of Gamma World? Well, Jim Ward came to TSR with this really great idea that was, maybe 2/3 developed. And it was given to Jake to finish and to do the heavy edit, rewrite, etc. And it's a really, really fun system. Yeah, I think it still holds up very well today, in my opinion. But then again, to be fair, I'm not a huge sci-fi player. I do prefer post-apoc after the disaster. Okay, now this is a long comment, but it's very valid. Your discussions about character sheets really struck a chord with me. Lately, I've gotten tired of hearing my players say, "What do I roll?" and then gazing at the character sheet stats as I present them with an in-game situation. I'm an old campaigner like you, and I'm more accustomed to using my wits, not my character sheet, to solve problems. I really loathe the over-reliance on die rolls in place of role-playing. I've come to the conclusion that maybe I should let my players look over their character sheets thoroughly before each gaming session and then snatch them away before proceeding. Ooh, that sounds a little harsh. That way they'll be forced to respond to each situation based on their imagination instead of what a sheet of paper in front of them tells them they can do. Am I crazy, or am I playing in the spirit of the game as Damon Gary intended? Well, you're not quite crazy, and you're not quite playing in that spirit. I address that in a different way. When I do a high-level game at a convention, which obviously I'm no longer doing anymore, I had a set of high-level pre-gens. And I made up some really, really pretty eye candy character sheets. And I had on there every role they were going to need. All their saving throws against each, all 6 of the saving throws. And everything I could possibly think of to put on there. I had their Thaco. I had, if they had multiple weapons, I had multiple Thacos. And the weapons had a pluses, I explained it. And I crammed every bit of information onto that sheet that I could. Now, in a con, I don't expect them to be able to memorize all that. But if you take that same approach back to your home campaign, and you give them something that's got every damn thing that's somewhat likely to come up, they'll probably start memorizing it without realizing it. And then when they know what they need, whether it's an easily attainable number or a very hard to obtain number, they'll start immediately making decisions on a course of action, on a response, on a reaction. That's my belief. That if you give them every bit of information, they'll eventually, after a few sessions, they'll know what's on the sheet, and they won't stand there or sit there staring at it with a vapid expression on their face. Because, all right, I know that I'm going to need a high die roll, so I better think of something spectacular that's going to give me shave some of those numbers off in my favor. All right. Now, I think taking the character sheets away is kind of rough. Yeah, I know it's frustrating when they keep going, and every time if this were me, I'd like to think that the first time somebody, well, what should I do? Well, what do you think you ought to do? Don't look at your sheet. What do you think would be a good response in this circumstance? And encourage them to make a right one before they make it, if you catch my drift. When I'm playing with a group that knows me and I know them and whatever, I'll let them bandy about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and I'll stop them at one point. All right, now tell me exactly what it is you plan to do. And now they have to give me a logical sequence of events that they have worked out on their own. And I warn them, I warn all the people I play with, if you say it out loud, you might do it. There's no takebacks. Well, I'm just going to go over there and pull on the door. Okay, you just did. Now, I'm not always that harsh. I might sometimes choose to ignore or not hear a bad idea. Because after all, particularly in the way I play is at cons, we're there to have fun. We're not there to change the imbalance of power on a given world. We're there to have some fun for 4 hours. Am I wrong? Isn't that what we're there for, to have fun? I mean, that's what I'm there to DM for. Like the choice I gave them at that symposium thing. You want brutal or do you want fun? And it was April 1st, and they chose fun, and we did. We had fun. You can. There's a series of things you can do that'll drive home the fact that they got to make their own decisions. And that is, give them a circumstance where there's just, come on, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Come on, come up with something. Don't let them look. Don't let them attack them with 35 half-size bugbears with little tiny bows and arrows. The arrows only do a half a hit point. But just attack them with a 4. All right, what are you going to do? I mean, these arrows are flying all over everywhere. The air is thick with arrows. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And get them off their collective butts and get them to do something without consulting the sheet. Get them to apply common sense. Well, I'm going to get under something so they can't shoot that shit at me. There's a good start. If you can encourage your players to do something mundane that's pertinent to what's going on, try that. I don't know. I would use humor. I would goad them. Come on, you can't look at that thing. Come on, what are you going to do? Come on. You think they're waiting for you? And I'd get some chuckles going around the table. Not embarrass someone to the point of being red-faced, but poking them. Come on. Poke them. Well, what would you do if I was chasing you with a long pole with a point on the end? Well, I'd run and duck. Okay, that's a good start. All right. I won't say avidly following, but I've been dropping in once in a while to see what the latest outrage is in the industry. and what's going on and who's running around like a chicken without a head, carrying on about what. And the impression I get right now from what I'm seeing, and again, you don't never know how much is hyperbole, excuse me. I just realized my phone was dying. How much of it's hyperbole and how much of it's actual fact. But it would appear that D&D is tanking. Somebody had said it a year or so ago that it's peaked. It looks as though Wizards is imploding. Some of the big hotshots at Hasbro are gone. In the wake of the failed digital, all the money and time they spent in the digital and all that damn COVID, it got over. And now people don't have to play indoors, and so all these years and money we spent has just been pissed down the drain. So I imagine that some of the firings and the stuff that I'm hearing about, and you're probably hearing about, might actually have a basis in fact. And it does happen every now and again. So, they've had a shake-up. Some top-level people have left. Whether they resigned or were shoved out the door is immaterial. They're not there anymore. They broke up the team. And then I saw something that I almost had to grab my eyelids and pull them down to make my eyeballs stop rolling. Because apparently somebody's saying that the savior, the new kid on the block, the new system that's going to take over the world by storm is coming from Roll20. My response is, you must be shitting. Are you shitting me? Roll20. The second-rate actors who do a second-rate job of playing out a role-playing game for vicarious enjoyment by viewers. Somehow the White Knight riding in on the destroyer image just doesn't stick. So we'll see. Maybe there's nothing wrong with D&D whatsoever. Maybe Hasbro, I know Hasbro's stock is tanked. Well, not tanked, but it's lost money. And their net worth has gone way down over the past year. You know, it's like checkers, chess, parcheesi. There'll always be people that want to play D&D. Always. Maybe 100 years from now, it'll be a quaint custom that nobody does anymore. But with what's going on right now, I don't foresee it dying away peacefully anytime soon. But hey, I'm mortal. I make mistakes too. What do I know? Dodata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in
first level spell brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree,
high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.